Hey, what's going on, SMT Nation? It's your boy, the SMT. Today we're doing a Speed with Sneed episode, this one on AT&T. I'm going to be testing a bunch of sites. I think I've got about 4 for you guys, and I'm going to give you a full breakdown, completely thorough, everything that I connect to, how it performs, all the connectivity, all the specifics. Now, the 2 things I'm going to be testing are all going to be coming from small cells. The reason I'm doing this is because these are all completely for capacity. We're talking downtown CLE, mostly around areas where there's a lot of walkers, a lot of traffic, whether it's walking or auto traffic, condos, apartments, things like that, where there's a lot of devices that would connect with high data demands. The reason I chose AT&T for this is because in my experience, at least here in the CLE, I know all regions are different, AT&T has become the most high capacity network available in commercial telecom. People are speculating that T-Mobile could be the next most highly capacitive network. They could overtake AT&T and Verizon and things like that, and that's totally possible, but that's not happening now. So I'm just going off of what I see right now in the CLE. AT&T has the most high capacity network right now. The first thing I want to do is show you guys how much AT&T has changed here in the CLE. I mean, it has become an amazing network. They've upgraded so much. So many of their sites have gotten so fast. It is incredible. I'm going to share that with you all. Pretty much every time I do a speed test, I'm getting 100 plus megabits per second, and 200 megabits per second or more has become very, very common. It's also very common for me to see this from both the capacity setups, where it's things like small cells and nodes, but I'm also seeing similar speeds out of macro sites. So it's incredible to see how much spectrum can do for a network when you have those licenses available in a certain market. Essentially what AT&T is doing is they're using it's pretty much a 5 carrier aggregation setup. They're taking a lot of the LTE bands like band 2, 4, 66. They're also utilizing 14 and 30, but they're also using LAA unlicensed spectrum to achieve these speeds. I'll be sharing the connection to band 46. This is unlicensed spectrum, LAA, sometimes referred to LTE-U, and this stuff is really fast. It's in the 5.2 frequency range, 5.2 gigahertz, and it's typically found in 20 megahertz channels. And in my experience, man, this stuff is really cooking. I'll throw this in there as well, and I'm going to be doing this testing later. AT&T also does hold spectrum licenses with N260, which is 39 gigahertz. I will be testing that later, but it's not involved in today's testing. So let me go ahead and give you guys the rundown on the spectrum assets that I was testing here and which frequency bands I was connected to in the testing. I did connect to band 2, which is 1900 megahertz, band 66, which is 1700, 2100 megahertz, depending on the block that you were connected to, and that also depends on the carrier as well. There's band 14, which is their first net contract. Band 14 is a low band 700 megahertz spectrum asset. For those of you unfamiliar with the term carrier aggregation, this is basically when you get 5 simultaneous connections to a phone. If a carrier can connect multiple bands, let's say, for example, like the ones I listed, like band 2, band 66, band 30, band 14, maybe another 66, it connects all of those carriers simultaneously at the same time, thus improving your capacity and giving you higher data throughput speed. There is one thing here for carrier aggregation. You gotta have the hardware. You have to have a phone that can actually do this. So if you have an oldie but moldy type of old school hand-me-down phone, that won't work with a lot of these newer bands and these newer technologies. If your phone is older than like 2 or 3 years old, you're definitely not going to be connecting to band 14 or band 30 when it comes to AT&T, and probably not even band 46 for that matter. If your phone's like 2018 or newer, definitely 2019 or newer, you're probably covered with all of this stuff. So word to the wise, if you want to have a faster phone and you want to take advantage of all the new technologies that your carrier has developed and utilized and deployed, you got to get rid of the iPhone 4S, you got to get rid of the iPhone 5, the S4, whatever old phone you have, you got to move on, you got to upgrade if you're going to take advantage of this. Remember, when you pay your bill, that money goes back into the network investment. So why would you be paying your bill to have upgraded features on your plan and your network and then not take advantage of it because you won't or refuse to upgrade your phone? Now that we got all of that out of the way, that's all of the nitty-gritty, the details and specifics. Let's go ahead and start all the testing. All of that starts now. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get things started with the first round of testing. Do keep in mind that a lot of the information I provide here, these are, pretty much the setup here in CLE. So it might be different in your city or your town, but this is what we've got here. These sites are pretty much all 5 carrier aggregation setups. They are, in most cases, going to be 3-carrier aggregation with unlicensed spectrum, along with band 2 and as well as band 66. So that being said, site number 1 here, this is located on West 25th and Main Avenue. This street connects to the flats near the Cuyahoga River. There's bars, restaurants, other festivities going on. There's condos, apartments, a lot of residential as well as businesses, other businesses and so on. It's located kind of near the highway. There's also street traffic. There's work going on. There's people that are just kind of like going, through these streets and these neighborhoods. What I also noticed is that, in terms of the small cells, the downlink speeds, especially at this one, was able to exceed 400 megabits per second, which was pretty awesome. One of the things that I also noticed is that the way that these carriers were aggregating, band 66 5 megahertz, band 215, and then there were 3 carriers of band 46 LAA unlicensed spectrum for a combination of 60 megahertz. So that's 5 carrier aggregation with a total bandwidth of 80 megahertz, and it showed in the speed 20 megahertz unlicensed. 20 megahertz licensed and 60 megahertz unlicensed for a grand total of 80 megahertz. 473 on the downlink, 33 on the uplink. Latency is around 24 milliseconds. And then on the second test, I got 480 on the downlink, 34 on the uplink, and 18 milliseconds. Now for this second site, site number 2, this is located actually in the flats, right over the river. There are some condos that are right there in the vicinity. There's some apartments. There's a lot of walking traffic, a lot of driving traffic. There are tons of events in this area, concerts, shows, and other festivities. Band 2, 15 megahertz. Band 66, 5 megahertz. Band 46, 3 carriers of 20 megahertz each. So for a grand total of 80 megahertz, it was a combination of 20 megahertz licensed, 60 megahertz unlicensed. This was essentially the same setup as the last location. The testing here at this location was fast. It was really good. One of the things that I noticed here is that the latency was a little bit better than the first location. So whatever configuration and setup this location had seemed to help with the ping, but it did not have the same speed as the first site. And I think this was just, it's just capacity, right? It's just congestion. There must be more people on this particular site, because when I tested this one, I was only able to get, and I use the word only, 151 megabits per second on the downlink and 34 megabits per second on the uplink. Not bad at all, but I think what's happening here is that this particular site clearly has more data traffic. There are probably more users on the site, more AT&T devices connected at this point in time. It would be nice to see if I could come back at a different time and see what type of results I get depending on the time of day. But I did test this in the afternoon, kind of like mid-afternoon. So that's what I got at site 2. Now for site number 3, this was on the east bank of the flats in the CLE, near the Odeon, where a lot of the different concerts and performances, a lot of bands play there, different types of things happen. There's also some breweries located on the street. There's some clubs, there's some bars, there's a lot of walking traffic, a lot of automobile traffic. There's trains, there's buses, a lot of ride-sharing services like Ubers and Lyft. I know a lot of that has changed with the pandemic, but there are also like lofts and apartments and condos. There's hookah shops, a lot of businesses that patrons like to hang out at. So for this round of testing, I was able to get 17 millisecond latency, so a pretty nice ping, 364 on the downlink in terms of megabits, and then 6 uplink. And that was something that I saw in all my testing. The uplinks weren't that great. I wonder what was going on. I'm actually going to go in and see if there could be a problem with my SIM card or the way that my SIM is provisioned. But for whatever reason, the uplinks were generally low. I like to possibly chalk it up to maybe just congestion, people using the network. So the primary band here was band 66. In my previous test, it was band 2. So this time around, it was band 66 is the primary, 5 megahertz of it, 3 carriers of band 46 at 20 megahertz each. No band 2 here. That was kind of interesting. I was surprised. In previous tests, in the first 2, I was connecting to 15 megahertz of band 2. I was not getting this at this site. I double checked it just to make sure, but there was no band 2 on this site. So I was surprised by that. So it looks like however they do the aggregation, it could be band 2 or band 66 connecting all of that other stuff. All right, now the last site, this would be site number 4. This one was off of West 25th. Pretty much a shopping area adjacent to a grocery store. There are apartments located nearby. There are homes. There are bars. There's an ice cream shop. There's banks. A lot of different businesses. You guys can see the setup there. I'm testing the LTE equipment at the top. The bottom equipment is actually millimeter wave NR nodes. So all the sites that I tested today were all for LTE only. I will return to these sites to actually test the millimeter wave very soon. Band 30, I connected 10 megahertz. Band 14, I connected 10 megahertz. Band 66, 10 megahertz. Band 215, and another band 66, 5 megahertz for a total of 50 megahertz. No LAA here. No band 46 at all. What I saw here in my testing were speeds that were exceeding 180, pushed over 200 megabits per second on the downlink. In fact, one of the tests I got, I think it was like 225 on the downlink, 17 megabits per second on the uplink, and 18 milliseconds on the latency. Now, I will note, this was the only one that I tested that had the same configuration and hardware that did not have LAA. But it was good because I wanted to see the difference in the configuration. So without LAA, they're only pushing 50 megahertz. With the LAA configuration, AT&T was getting 80 megahertz of access. So that wraps up this round of testing. I hope you guys really enjoyed it. It was fun actually, producing this and filming it. Again, I've really enjoyed using AT&T as one of my main drivers on my Sims. The testing was done on an S20 Plus, and it does have the AT&T firmware and all of those things. So I try to, give AT&T all that they could show and prove, and it was really good, and I've really enjoyed using the network. I will say that I will be testing the millimeter wave very soon, so be on the lookout for an oncoming video. Thank you all for taking this time to watch this video. If you could, please do me a solid. Give this video a like. Share it to your favorite social media platforms. Also, if you are enjoying this content and you want to become a subscriber, you know what to do. Hit the subscribe button, activate the bell notification icon so you never miss an upload from the SMT. And also check out some of the links in the description box. We got the SMT Patreon page. We also have the Twitter handle at SneedTech. We also do Periscope Lives there as well. And if you're not ready to leave the channel just yet and you want to check out some other videos from the SMT, here are some others that have been hand selected for you. I do hope that you do enjoy those. Anyways, I am the SMT. I hope you have a great rest of the day, and we will see you all on the next video. Peace.